So I got sucked into the competitive Dead by Daylight section of YouTube recently. I've been watching a lot of those videos, and I love that the players that love the game just found a way to make this asymmetrical game into a really high skill competitive game. I know they've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years refining the format and balancing it, and I think it's in a really good place now. So since it's going so well, I'd like to throw in some chaos and mess all of that up. So here are my 5 terrible but fun ideas for competitive modes for Dead by Daylight. So this idea I call the one and done killer season. So my proposal is that we take advantage of the fact that most of the competitive Dead by Daylight tournaments happen over the course of a season, and each team gets to use each killer only once. So you don't want to lose with your nurse on the bench, that would be quite a shame, but also you don't want to make it to the finals with Trapper left and that's it. So I think this would bring a lot of strategy into planning out the whole season. So trying to figure out, like, per each team that you're playing, which killers do you think you need, and like what games do you think you can sneak in some of these weaker killers, and which games are must wins, like throw the nurse out there. I know typically that's not how it's done. I know typically teams play the same killer back to back, and I'm sure that's the most balanced way to do it, but this is about a season-long strategy, so this is a totally different frame of mind and totally different strategy needed to win this tournament. My next idea is trying to see how deep is your roster really. So, a lot of these teams have 1 or 2 amazing killer players that play most of the matches, and, obviously these guys are fun to watch. But I also know that probably everybody on that team can play killer pretty well, and I want to see what that looks like. I also think that having each player only be able to play killer one time is going to make the matchups really interesting. So are you trying to bring out your best killer against their best killer, or are you trying to force a mismatch? And that's going to be also a lot of like mind gaming, trying to figure that out. So I just think that at the end of that, that the best team really won because you played through everybody, right? The next one is a 2v1 mode. So I know when I'm watching matches, when it gets down to just 2 players left, usually those matches don't last that long, but it can still be really tense and exciting, especially if they just have to pop one more generator to get the tie or the win condition. I love seeing the players go into super stealth mode, and I feel like this really showcases teamwork in a different way because, sometimes people just get you better. They understand exactly what you're trying to say. So if you have a duo that really can work together as one person, I feel like they could do really well in this mode, and I'd love to see which 2 players have what it takes. I think you might have to make a couple killer alterations, like you might even have to have like a no power Trapper out there. You might have to take away hooks or something, and give them unbreakable and give them some kind of things like that. But I just think that would be really interesting to see, what the kind of like stealthy heist mode kind of play style would be, which is very different than how the game normally looks. My proposal is to have this in a match with the full 7 generators out on the map, so the killer's not going to know where they're attacking. I just know watching some of those 2v1 matches were just so interesting that I want to see what happens when they plan for it. If you've ever been stuck with a really sweaty, horrible 3-gen, this mode's for you. And in this scenario, you would let the killer pick the ugliest, meanest, nastiest 3-gen they can find and try to defend it and see how long they could defend it for. So I think time would be a big factor in this one. How long does it take for either all players to be eliminated or to break the 3-gen? This would be kind of like a siege warfare battle, a war of attrition, trying to pick at these generators and know when to move, know when to chase for the killers, when do they need to hook, etc. So there's just going to be a lot of little decisions that are going to be important in this battle. And this one maybe is a little bit on the sillier side, but obviously I'm a board gamer. I play a lot of board games. I play a lot of social deduction games, a lot of Werewolf, Blood on the Clocktower. So I think it would be fun to have sort of like a social deduction mode on Dead by Daylight. And the way I would propose to do this is a variant of the Protect the President kind of like fun mode people do. So you would have one player you would decide is the president, and the killer player is trying to figure out which player that is, and if they kill that player they get a lot of extra points. And I think the best way to do that is to give that player some easy to notice perks. So maybe they're really powerful perks, but if they use it, they're immediately outed as the president and they're going to be targeted. So I think that could bring some interesting strategy where you have the other survivors. Maybe you have a survivor that just tries to hide the whole time to be the decoy for the president, or maybe the president acts really aggressive so that the killer would never think that they're possibly the president. You know, I just think that could be really funny to watch. And there you have it. Those are my 5 ideas for competitive modes for Dead by Daylight that I would love to see. If you have any other ideas that are fun, like drop them down below. I'd like to, maybe me and my friends will try some of them out. Maybe you guys will try out some of the ones that I suggested. And like, let's just keep brainstorming. And also, if you're one of those people that does actual competitive Dead by Daylight tournaments and you want any of these ideas, feel free to try them out. And if you need any help bringing them to life, let me know. I'd love to help. So anyway, thanks for watching. Have fun out there, and I'll see you in the next one.